Welcome, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm on the NPA steering committee. Welcome to the September 2025 meeting of the Ward 5 Neighborhood Planning Assembly. When we start with introductions of the steering committee, and then we'll do some brief preamble, and then we'll have a public forum. So I'm Jason Van Drysch. I live on Caroline Street, and I've been on the steering committee for about 2.5 years, I think.
I'm Primrose. I use she, her pronouns. I've been on the steering committee since the spring. And feel free to sit at the tables if you guys want. Yeah, it's nice.
This is not like a commission or a board where, like, the riffraff have to sit at the edges. We're all riffraff here.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm on the steering committee. I almost feel like this is a steering committee meeting. We didn't expect big attendance tonight. We were just getting back after the summer. So welcome to the people that are here, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion.
I'm Lena, they, them pronouns. I live on Maple Street. I've been on the steering committee for 2.5 years. Next time, bring more of your friends.
And the best way to bring them is free food. And really good free food.
Where is Freed?
So he had to go. Oh, by the way, Fareed, who brought the food, is also on the steering committee. He runs the People's Kitchen as well as being on the steering committee, and he has another event that he's feeding tonight. So he's going and doing that, and then coming back later. And also on our steering committee, but not here tonight, is Jack Tiana. Am I missing anybody? I don't think so. Okay. So the NPA was created by Bernie back when he was mayor, and it's intended as local democracy, as a way for people to be involved in thinking, planning, decision-making, giving advice, consent, etc., about things that affect our neighborhood. And it's organized by wards. This is the Ward 5 NPA. This is very intentionally set up as a welcoming space for everybody from any background, any perspective is welcome here. And we all listen, treat each other civilly, and appreciate the differences that we bring and what that adds to the conversation. So is there anything crucial that I'm forgetting? We don't have the opening slide, and I'm going from memory. That's kind of the main thing. So let's start with a public forum, and public forum is exactly what it sounds like. Anybody who has any, excuse me, question, idea, announcement, you name it, that is relevant to Ward 5 and you'd like to share with your neighbors, now's the time. And we ask that you speak into a microphone, because the microphones are so that the people online can hear us, and so the recording of the event from channel 17 is audible to anybody who wants to listen later, which I understand has a fairly good size audience. So please do grab a mic, and then say your name and general where you live in the ward, or if you don't live in the ward, what brings you here.
Hello, my name is David Foss. I live at Decker Towers in Burlington. I just want to let our ward know, and the rest of the city, whoever watches, October 11th, Indigenous Peoples Weekend, also Canadian Thanksgiving. Several BHA residences and other businesses, we're going to have a kind of like an open, I call it a bazaar, an open market, and there'll be food. If you guys want, usually that Saturday is beautiful. And if you want to, spread some information, the residents of those buildings are going to sell some wares and maybe some clothes and stuff they don't need anymore, but it's going to be a festive atmosphere. So if you get a chance, come on down. It's from 9 to 3 on that Saturday.
Where is it?
It's going to be in the Bob and Mill complex, which is just up the street. So if you guys have a chance, come down. It's going to be well worth it.
Okay. Others.
Thank you. I didn't want to go like if there were residents who had something. My name is Mila Grant. I'm the Central District City Councilor, Wards 2 and 3. I serve as the chair of the Public Safety Committee. I am here just to do some quick reminders. The Public Safety Committee meets on the fourth Thursday of each month, so we'll be having a meeting next Thursday. The meetings and any reporting and data are available in Civic Clerk, which is accessible by clicking the agenda button in the lower left-hand corner on the city's website, and you just click on the calendar. We have still continuing once a month, a public safety press conference with Mayor Mulvaney Stanek, the fire chief, the police chief, and any other individuals, department heads or leaders that are working on community safety issues. They're very, very good. They're very informative. And even if you don't have the time to actually watch them, just to get the slides. And in the last August 28th meeting, I included the slides from the monthly meeting. And I just want to give a couple of indications of data. So when we look at data from January 1st of this year through August 15th, as compared to the average for the years 2021 to 2024, our foot patrols are up 84%. I think we can all agree we are seeing officers downtown in a way that we had not seen for quite some time. Basically, they're being directed, if they are not on an active incident, to be doing patrols. Directed patrols are up 2,268%. That's 2,268%. And that includes looking at hotspots. It includes, you'll probably see more cruisers driving around in the different neighborhoods. So it's kind of getting back to community policing. We've had 75% increase in trespass. We've had, it's still low, but compared to what it was before, 40% in being proactive about traffic. We have also increased in arrest, warrants in state, that's gone up 54%, increase in violations of conditions of release. And we've also had the start of the situation table, which is going to be looking at individuals who are really taking up a lot of our community response system. And how can we reduce the risk factors? What needs to be done? How can all these agencies come together to help these individuals so that they can be brought back into the community, and we're reducing the need for police, fire, and other community agencies. So there's a lot of tools going on, and the data is there, and the data is important. The last thing I want to...
Before you keep going, can I
Oh,
ask
sure.
you?
Yeah.
You said trespass was up some percentage and then a couple other things. Do you mean the actual incidence of trespassing has gone up, or that police ability to respond to those issues has gone up by that amount?
The ability to respond to people who have issues with trespass. Sometimes
Meaning that more often we're seeing an officer go there rather than just say file a report on the website.
that's correct.
Got it.
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you. It
Yeah.
sounded like you meant that actual trespassing had gone up by a large amount, and that didn't seem consistent with what else you were saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, it's an indication of we're getting responses. I mean, we used to have like certain people never call police. I mean, that's just America. That's the way it is. Just people who don't call the police. And then on the other hand, you have people call the police for everything. We got to a point where people just who would normally call the police stopped calling the police because there was no response. The priority response plan was not working. It was broken. Chief Burke is acknowledged that, and he's doing things very differently. And every month he's got something new about how he's been examining processes within the department and making changes. He's going to have a couple of changes coming down where certain types of incidents will not have a sworn officer go, like a welfare check. You can send a community support liaison or a community service officer. You don't have to send a welfare check. Let's say you are walking down the street and you see someone in a car that doesn't look great. or slumped over a wheel, or someone wants somebody checked on, literally to see if someone is okay. If it's an incident that is not initiated with any type of violence, it can be a CSO or a CSL. Listen, that guy said that you don't have to throw a police officer at everything. So I am like feeling warm and fuzzy about all these things that he is doing. I think everybody knew how difficult the relationship I had was with the former chief, because he was incompetent. He wasn't doing the job. We have someone who's really doing the job now, really deep diving and saying that, back in the day, we threw officers at everyone, and now that's not the challenge. And we never should have thought that police officers could solve the housing crisis. We never should have thought that police officers should be solely responsible for getting people into therapy. Arresting people, putting them in the jail doesn't necessarily help them if they're suffering from substance use disorder. We never should have thought police officers said, when I was a police commissioner, they talked about it all the time, that they were just not prepared for the number of incidents related to mental health. So we are really diversifying that department with professional positions, and he's looking at how we use them, and he's just thinking very differently. He recently spoke to the Ward 2 NPA last week. I encourage everyone to watch it. I think it's really helpful. He talked about, help from Vermont State Police. He's like, I've talked to Vermont State Police. He goes, they have labor shortages. They can't, it's not a good idea. So I think we need to be listening to what he's saying. And thank you for the question. The last thing I wanted to say, speaking of Vermont State Police, remember there's this story that said that Mayor Mulvaney Stanek had turned down help from the governor. She turned down having Vermont State Police come to Burlington. I emailed WCAX and I said, this is false reporting. Like, you should retract this. And I got a letter from their news director, Roger Garrity, and he said, we stand by our reporting. He said on August 20th at his weekly press conference, Governor Phil Scott was questioned extensively on the issues in Burlington and whether the state would provide assistance. He said he would be willing to provide, quote unquote, more enforcement, and went on to use the example of when he offered state police to assist with patrols during Mayor Weinberger's tenure. I think we rightly inferred that as an offer to provide policing help. That is not journalism. And regretfully, a fellow city councilor ran with that. And when the mayor's office said it wasn't true, Councilor Litwin insulted the staff. So we have to be very careful where we get our news from, and we have to be more vigilant about tracking sources and data, and also just listening to the mayor's updates, which Mayor Mulvaney Stanek every meeting gives updates to the city. So even if you can't watch the whole city council meeting, just to read her updates or just to listen to that part of the meeting is really, really crucial. And thank you so much for the time. I know you don't normally give that much time, but anytime anybody has any questions about community safety, please feel free to reach out to me. And thank you for dinner.
Others?
Can I respond or maybe ask a question and also share an experience? My name is Alex Elron and I live on Caroline Street. I want to say that I feel very proud of your story jogged my memory of living in places where there was very poor journalism and very limited journalism. And I think that a lot of places in the United States, journalism has been undercut. And so I'm not really specifically in response to that, but just more generally, how grateful I am to live in a place that supports local journalism in the way that we do. Maybe not in this case specifically. Your comments about community policing jogged my memory of an incident the other day where I was coming back home to the Five Sisters, and I came across an injured or wounded or sick animal, a skunk crossing the road, and he was in really bad shape. And I kind of stopped and ended up biking up. What's the apartment building right here? Is it Jackson Place? Yeah. Jackson Terrace. And following the skunk there to see if I could get it some help, and ended up staying there for maybe 30 to 45 minutes talking to residents about how this was a consistent issue. They had called the police a number of times. I had called the Burlington police, called the state police. They had referred me to the state police, who referred me to the game warden, who wasn't working that evening, who referred me to independent wildlife rehab specialists who don't work with rabies vectors. Long story short, I spoke with at least 5 to 6 individuals that evening over the course of half hour, 45 minutes on the phone, about trying to get somebody to help this animal that was in very severe distress and was clearly in decline and was going to die soon, and was also, there was a good chance that it was going to infect. Apparently, there was a litter of kittens behind Jackson Place that hadn't been vaccinated. So to get to the point, I realized that we don't have animal control in Burlington. I've lived in places where we did have animal control, and there were active responses to these kinds of problems. So I wanted to make a note of that and maybe pose the question about why that might be and whether there's anything we can do about it.
We did have animal control. I need to get some information on that because there's been, like recently, there were actually some updates related to animals and remember the leashing of cats and that whole thing. And CSOs, I believe, are normally supposed to go out on animal issues, but before you leave tonight, let me give you my card so you can email me and I can have your contact information. Cool. But I'll look into that in more detail. Yeah,
we were told by the dispatcher, who had received 7 calls about this specific skunk by concerned residents at the time that I spoke with them, that the CSOs were not equipped to handle this type of incident.
Okay.
Not many people are equipped to handle skunks.
Yeah. I mean, you should have seen it. This skunk was not hurting anybody. This skunk needed help. It was moving, very slowly.
Can I go?
Thank you.
Yeah. So Milo, I just wanted to follow up on your city circle. You mentioned that they're starting that.
Situation table, and then the city circle is also, we're trying to fast track that.
Right. So let me talk about City Circle real quick. All right. So the City Circle is from the Burlington Community Justice Center. And what it is, it's a rapid restorative justice alternative for ordinance violations in the city. And they're looking for volunteers for that to come in. And what the volunteers will do is sit down with these offenders and work through what is necessary for them to resolve the issue. And they're having an orientation this Wednesday, September 24th. You can sign up at the Community Justice Center website, which is, I think, burlingtoncjc.org or something like that. You'd have to look for sure. And then the other thing they're doing is they are having some free training clinics at the Miller Center. And it's going to be on Wednesday mornings, I think from 9 to 11, 3 weeks in a row on conflict resolution. And I can say that their training is really good. I just completed this 7-hour program with them, just learning more about the Community Justice Center and restorative justice. And it was fun and it was intense. And it's got me, I was already a volunteer with them, but it's gotten me to volunteer for even more. So those are some things that are coming up that they're looking for the community to get involved with.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you for that reminder.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Scott Lowe. I live right here on Pine Tree. I actually live at Jackson Terrace. And this is in reference to the City Circle and the Burlington Community Justice Center. I've been involved with other community justice centers. I'm a certified inmate legal assistant and have been for a number of years. And I'd like to know, how is that going to be any different than the current COSA programs that are being offered by the criminal justice centers COSA stands for Circles of Support and Accountability, that are offered out of the CJCs.
I think what makes this different is that we have a set of laws in Vermont that, well, there's two things. One, the set of laws in Vermont that limits what you can hold people for. Also, we don't, whenever possible, for lesser types of ordinance violations or crimes, don't necessarily want jail to be the first option. The state of Vermont spends almost $3.5 million a year sending inmates to Mississippi. We don't have the space. We don't have enough judges, et cetera. So this is to add a layer to address what's happening in Burlington, to keep some of these cases out of the courts, but to have some sort of accountability. Because we have people who can, tickets aren't really, that it's not a form of accountability because you're dealing with people who quite frankly can't pay the tickets. So if they can do something else, and if they can, if they have a certain number of tickets, that could turn into a more serious charge. If we can keep them out of the court system, that benefits everyone. And they're having some sort of accountability that they do not have right now. Now, if they aren't willing to go through that process, then the court system starts to get involved. And another thing that's unique about the downtown circle is that the city's city attorney's office will be involved with that, just because the current system can't handle all those extra cases.
So are you looking at like a court diversion program?
I think in a way it could be considered that. I don't think it's formally that. What we're looking for is accountability, to put accountability in areas it does not currently exist. People have felt that, people have talked about enabling people, or we're too permissive. I'm sure we've all heard those terms. Well, what is the reality of the situation is we had, how do you increase directed patrols by over 2,000%? It's because you weren't doing them, right? We let enforcement go down to next to nothing. So when you're in that situation and you're trying to come back and you're trying to improve the environment for people who live here, for people who are visiting here, for people who are who own businesses, and for people themselves, we have to have accountability. And this is a new way of looking at these situations for a variety of ordinances that people aren't going to be held for. The Vermont laws are not going to dictate that they be held.
So we should probably.
And it's a way to get them back into community too. I think that's a really big thing. How do we get people back into community, and having that level engagement helps. Thank you.
So we should probably put a wrap on the public forum. It sounds like there's an important question there about the relationship between different but similar services. And I'd encourage you to follow up. The chair of the Public Safety Committee is a good person to talk to about this, and it's a very legitimate question. So thank you. All right, why don't we wrap the public forum and welcome our first guest, Mary Danko, the director of Fletcher Free Library.
Is this okay like this?
Yeah.
You can hear? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here today. I apologize to Counselor Grant, who has to hear my spiel again. I was at the NPA yesterday, and she's holding up her lovely library card keychain. Thank you. Card carrying member of the Fletcher Free Library. Thank you. I'm here today because it is September is National Library Card Sign Up Month. And so I'm going out into the community and reminding people about the wonderful services you can get at the public library here in Burlington. And if you're already a library card holder, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. If you're not, I did bring some forms with me. They're on the table over there. You will need to come into the library and show proof of residency. And I also brought some stickers and some brochures as well. And perhaps if you're already a library card member, maybe you know someone, a neighbor or a friend who lives here, and you could encourage them to get a library card.
I just noticed that your earrings are library cards.
They are my, we had a set of these that came that were not functioning and they let us keep them. And so one of our staff members made some earrings a while back.
That's smart.
You mentioned proof of residency. What proves residency for your purposes?
You can have, obviously if you have a driver's license or some sort of ID that's on there, but if you also have a utility bill that has your address on there, we can do that too. And also people who work in Burlington, so you maybe have a friend or a colleague who doesn't live in Burlington but works in Burlington, you can get a library card that way. And again, you just have to have some sort of proof that you're at a business that's here in Burlington. So when I give this little talk, I always like to remind people, the library is really these two entities. We have our bricks and mortar, which we have our downtown branch, and we also have a branch in the New North End. And those, they're great buildings to come into. I think that the 1904 Carnegie Building in downtown is one of the most beautiful buildings in downtown Burlington. And you can go in there, and obviously we have all kinds of books and materials, and you can stay in there and read. We have meeting rooms, tons of programming, tons of book discussions, lots of kids programming. We have teen programming as well. And we also have our tech center, which, we provide computer service and internet service to folks. And of course, our librarians there that are there to help you if you're struggling. When Counselor Grant was talking about getting onto the website to finding agendas or finding things on Civic Clerk, for some people that can be a little bit of a struggle. We, send people to the library. The librarians are happy to help them figure out their ways around sometimes these government websites there's a lot there. There's just sometimes a lot to go through. And then we have our online library, our digital resources, and you can get ebooks and audiobooks. We have movie streaming with Canopy. You can get the New York Times for free. You can get Consumer Reports. All you need to get to those things is your library card number and often your PIN number. Some of the things you can get right through the App Store. Some of them are through the website. If you go to fletcherfree.org and you go to digital resources, they're all right there. Again, sometimes for some folks, getting to those digital resources is a little bit more challenging than others. Again, please give us a call. We're happy to walk you through it. Even if you just call up and say, and we do get these calls, my son got me an iPad. How do I read ebooks on it? We can help with that. And we want to do that for you, because when we, as libraries, when we buy resources that we can share, it's good for everybody. One thing that we've added recently is we are part of the home card system, which means that there are many other libraries in this system that you can borrow from. For instance, Colchester comes to mind right now as well. So it's not a totally seamless experience at this point. We always keep working towards that, but it's a great option. And if you don't have the home card option, you do have to come in. You'll get a special little sticker on the back of your card, and that's kind of your passport to all these other different libraries. And we do have a couple of online resources that you do have to use in the library, and that's because that's just the way those vendors work. One of them is ancestry.com. So if you come into the library and use the tech center, you can access that. And actually, I forgot about one the other night. We also have a new service, which is called Westlaw. It's through the Vermont Department of Libraries, and it's the way that you can access all kinds of law cases. It's the same software that attorneys use, and it's a designated computer that will get you right into Westlaw. And the other one that I like to mention is Candid.
That's free, Westlaw?
It's free. It's free at the library. Yep. you do have to come in to use it, and it is one computer. And are you familiar with it? Yeah, it's a pretty
Sign up.
yeah, I mean, it's a pretty complex platform, but it really is comprehensive, and it is what attorneys use in their offices. And Candid is another online service that you have to use in the library, but you can just bring your laptop if you want. And this is a foundation directory, and it is a very robust platform that tells you all kinds of grants that are available, all kinds of grant funders, the things they've funded in the past, how much they've funded.
I called again.
Candid, Candid. I find it to be a very intuitive program to use, but again, if you're there and you're getting on it and you're struggling, please come and ask a librarian and they can help you through it. And it's a great way if you're a nonprofit and you're looking for funding opportunities, and it's that you can get that. And I think I will leave it at that. I could, as I said yesterday, I could talk for probably another half an hour about all the wonderful things that we do at the library. But limited time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
You know, one thing you didn't mention that I think is worth mentioning is that librarians are fierce about privacy. And that I think is increasingly important in a time when the big tech companies are eagerly handing over all kinds of information to national agencies that are doing not so great things with it. So the library is a great place to go if you want to learn something and don't want anybody looking over your shoulder. And there's all kinds of reasons why that might be the case. So libraries are awesome in that regard.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the construction going on right now, and if you'd be willing to say a few words, because I'm sure many people have been watching it with interest from the outside and not really knowing what's going on.
Sure. And we do have an email newsletter. So if you ever sign up for that, that's a good way to get updates on that too. And we try and update on social media as well. But what we have is our 1904 Carnegie building was really in need of some preservation work on the outside. So what you're seeing is all kinds of work on the mortar and the pointing, as well as the windows have come out. Because it's a historic building, we have to be super mindful about everything that we do. So the windows have all come out. They've been sent to a place in New Hampshire where they're getting refurbished with all the historical mindfulness that it has to have. And should be done around mid-December. I will say it has been a real eye-opener for us to, again, I think it is such a beautiful building, but the care and thoughtfulness that's going into this preservation work is quite detailed. Like, a discussion about mortar color for, an hour. I wasn't involved in that one, and mortar profiles, and just every, little thing is being considered, and it still has, it's 1904, it still has its original roof, slate roof. That's really something, right? So I think of librarians as caretakers, like you said, we caretake about the philosophy of privacy and freedom of speech. We caretake about our collection, and we also sometimes have to caretake about our physical buildings that have been around so long.
Love it. Any other questions for Mary? Okay, thank you so much.
I'll give you one. I want to say what you said about privacy. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I think you've probably had this experience too, is when you do things, digitally through vendors, they build up a database on you, an algorithm, right? And they think they know you, and they're like, you should read this and you should read this. I think one of the things that we really like about the library is you can come in and browse, and sometimes you find things with serendipity, right? Our librarians work really hard to curate a really interesting collection. And so I always encourage people to kind of break out of what people are telling you to read and just go and browse the library, browse the wonderful bookstores we have, and see what you can find out there in a serendipitous way.
Something cool a friend taught me last year or something is that anyone in Burlington can get a UVM library card too. So do that too if you want. They have a lot of good stuff.
you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All righty. So the next and last thing on our agenda for tonight is we want to open a conversation about housing and housing affordability, but with a specific goal in mind, and that is to help us shape an agenda for a future meeting where we want to really have an in-depth forum on housing and housing affordability here in Burlington. So what we'd like to do tonight is to enlist all of your brains, your concerns, your ideas, your thoughts, your hopes of what you would like a forum about housing to be about. If there are specific people or resources who you'd like us to see if we can bring in, if there are topics the way you've always wondered, why is blah, 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 how it is about housing in Burlington. We can't guarantee we'll get everything or figure everything out, but it'll be really useful to have your thoughts on what's on your mind when you think about housing and housing affordability in Burlington as we put something together for sometime in the coming months. So with that, I'll open it up.
Can you explain what kind of forum this would be? Is this a forum put on by the NPAs? Is this a forum that we have at this NPA meeting? Who's the
Yes.
audience?
Sorry, thank you. We're basically thinking of it as a special topic NPA meeting. So it'll be right here, same format as usual, but where often with an NPA meeting, we'll have a presentation about this and a Q&A about that and another presentation about some other thing. We want to do one that is really intensively and specifically on various angles on the housing issue. And what that'll look like is still to be determined. This is very much the early stages of figuring it out, and that's where we'd like your help.
We wanted to have a summer event in August, and because of a lot of logistical issues, that got canceled. But part of this housing, throughout last year, housing came up over and over again throughout the year at the meetings, but we never really got into any very specific discussions and really of how it affects people in Ward 5. Specifically, and things that could happen here. So at the summer event, we had planned to have some speakers that are directly related to the kind of housing that's here, whether it be low income housing or open market, and get some of their perspectives on it. But we're really looking for just the everyday resident to come out and say, hey, I can't live in Burlington because it's unaffordable, or, I'm leaving Burlington because it's unaffordable, or I came here because of housing. So that's the thinking behind it, is to just have a more detailed discussion, focused discussion, and spend an entire NPA meeting on it, and then see where it goes from there.
And one useful way to approach this this topic of figuring out what's going to be useful for an NPA meeting specifically on housing is it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Can be as straightforward as, what's your housing story? So if anybody wants to share where you live, what it took for you to get there, whether it's working for you or not, that's all the kind of thing that's super useful to help frame out something that's actually relevant to people living in Burlington. Scott, I overheard you say you grew up here in Burlington. I'm curious what your perspective is on this.
Well, it's funny that you ask, because I've lived in an owned home, I've lived in an apartment, and I have been homeless before. So I know what it's like. I know what a lot of these individuals that are unhoused are going through. I've utilized the Burlington Housing Authority. I've utilized state economic services for assistance. And of course, I've also held jobs with employers. I currently have a job with a local company here in Burlington. And during my time growing up here and during my time doing advocacy work for those that are unhoused and facing life's issues in difficult times, the biggest problem that I've seen being faced is the lack of social empathy by a lot of I don't want to say agencies. I want to say by a lot of resources, because they, for one, they're understaffed. There's just not enough of them. Two, there's just not hardly anything for funding anymore, and it's being taken away continually. Even now. That's not to say that the taxpayer should be paying for it. As a matter of fact, I see completely the opposite. What I think needs to be done is we need to have find volunteers if need be, but more people to help with locating and obtaining suitable, affordable housing. And there's a difference. There's plenty of houses out there. There's plenty of apartments out there. I mean, yeah, we need more, but they're not affordable. They're out of reach. And a lot of these people cannot get a job to pay for an apartment to rent because they need an address. I think there needs to be an emphasis on the programs like what Pathways Housing is doing. Pathways Housing is a phenomenal program that focuses on at least get a roof over their head, and it's a two-part system, working with people to either obtain a roof over their head or maintain and retain a roof over their head. And then a second team is helping them with everything else. Not having to worry about doctor's appointments for mental health care, not worrying about getting to economic services or Social Security to help with this, or to help them and helping them find suitable employment, gainful employment. So it needs to start with a base, and the base is a roof over their head. Personally, I would like to see in cooperation with a kind of a collaboration, if you will, between companies like Bissonnette, Pomerleau, Champlain Housing Trust, Burlington Housing. I'd like to see an expansion of the pod program that's on Elmwood Avenue, okay, in areas such as right here on Pine Street between the Maltex building and Burlington Electric. It's on the bus line. It has public water. It has public sewer. It has public power. It's also right around the corner from Economic Services, Social Security, and Vermont Higher Ability. I think a focus on getting immediate housing first, and once that has been somewhat established, expanding on that to make up a program for locating, obtaining, and retaining suitable housing.
Thank you. Others?
I guess,
You look like you have a thought. Go for it.
I got a quick thought. I would like to see this develop into maybe a summit of some kind where I'm already starting to invite the local council members, the local Vermont legislatures to come together and sit down and see if we can come up with some kind of plan, because the resources are being overrun. There's not enough people. None of workers, none of people making money. Taxes are going high. The government says there's no inflation, where you go to the grocery store every week, prices go up and stuff. And it all affects, and like Scott says, I think the basic need for people is we all need to have a roof overhead. For one, like he said, if you apply for jobs, you do need an address. So you should have some kind of stable place to start out of. And I would like to see all the agencies, work together, find some kind of location, first of all, maybe to slap up a building together that has bare necessities, but a roof, some bathrooms, places to stay clean, and where they could, I have used the term barn before, but some kind of place where people can, maybe 100 beds, a bunch of showers, some workstations, some places to keep people out of the cold, the rain, getting sick. And then digging hard, because this is going to be a long-term problem. We've got the federal government all crazy. People don't know where to go. The state government relies on the federal government. The city governments all rely on the federal government and the state governments, and nobody knows where funding is coming from. There's no jobs. There are jobs. I mean, a lot of laws have been changed. So a lot of these tenants, these landlords and stuff are getting away with things that they shouldn't be getting away with. The prices of housing in Burlington are crazy, crazy, crazy. I'm lucky. I live in Decker Towers, and we've had our own battles that are quite public over the last couple of years. It's happened even before, and it's happening again. We got to find a solution to the whole system problem. So,
Andy, I know you and Ruby live in a accessory dwelling unit, which is one solution to housing issues. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how that's been and how it was getting that in place, to whatever extent you might like to say something.
My name's Andy Simon. I live on Locust Street. I will talk about that. I do think that when we're thinking about, housing in Burlington, we see a lot of construction going on, and yet we always need more housing. So that's one of the big questions that, I've seen the statistics. I know Jack has talked a lot about, we need this many more. We're falling behind and we haven't built enough in Burlington. I would really like to know, somehow have a bigger picture of, like, okay, we're building these units like hotels, and we're building, high-rise apartments. How many people are being served by all this construction who really need housing? And how many of these units that are being built are going to be occupied full-time? Because I'm curious about that, not so much just like Airbnb short-term housing, but people who are buying an apartment in Burlington or even renting an apartment in Burlington and aren't living there all the time. It's like a place to come to. And
A 24/7 hotel that's yours without having to make a reservation.
Right. Well, I would like to know, in all of this housing picture, why we are so woefully bad at addressing the needs of the people who are the most vulnerable and the most the least able to afford housing. We seem to be focusing on this sort of vaguely trickle down model of like, we build a lot of housing. If it's luxury housing, well, they're going to open up, other housing. And it just feels to me like that doesn't work. It doesn't work on a national scale for economics, and it doesn't seem to be working in the housing in Burlington. Also, it's not just Burlington, it's Burlington, South Burlington, Williston, Essex Junction. I mean, these are all places that should be accessible to people who are working or living in Burlington, and there should be better transportation in Chittenden County, for instance, so that people can get to jobs elsewhere without having to drive a car. So those things seem really important to me. Accessory dwelling units are great. When we built our ADU in 2014, so 11 years ago, it was hard because the city didn't know what to do with us. Since then, we've become sort of a poster child for ADUs. Our picture shows up in these brochures and stuff like that. But at the time, it was like we had to sort of fight tooth and nail to actually be able to build this thing, because they just weren't sure what to do with us. It was like, oh yeah, there was an ordinance on the books, but the planning office just hadn't sort of quite caught up to the ordinance. Now I'm happy to know that it's easier, and I think it's a great way to, it's been great for us. We live in our daughter's backyard. We have a little family compound now, and it's cheap. It was cheap for us. We built it sort of working on it ourselves, and hired a guy who, would leave at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to go boating, and we'd do the rest of the work until he came back with his tools in the morning. Built the whole schmear for like $75,000. And that's kind of including lots of like the design course that Ruby did at Yestermorrow in order to sort of design the house. And, so it has been a great place for us to live.
Thank you. We are at time. I have just one more question. Obviously, if anybody else has thoughts, that's great. But I know there are several folks in the room who are young adults working, full-time jobs and figuring out housing in Burlington at that sort of earlier end of adulthood part of the spectrum. And if anybody in that situation would like to say anything about what that's like and what you'd like to see an event like this address in that context, that would be great. Did you want to say something, Freed?
No, I just want to mention, like, since we talked about the ADUs, like also single residency, the SRO units, that's like really helpful for people who are just starting out, and and it could like house a lot of people while you in like a dense location, and we need to be talking more about that. We're building SROs, and also all this abandoned building, that even downtown alone, they're just sitting there. The owners are not doing anything, just waiting for it to appreciate, I guess. I think that should be illegal. Like, well, there's this, housing crisis, so we need to do something about those.
What's that?
Single room occupancy. So you share like a bathroom, you share like the kitchen and bathroom usually, but then you have your own room. And you could fit like, like 10, 12 like units, and that will house that many people. They're usually not they're kind of like a loft studio, but even more spare, I guess. So
Glad you said that, Fareed. We made it work by finding a single family home and filling it with roommates. And I've seen examples of programs that match people with roommates, that talk about communication, that talk about what it's like to live with other people. I think this could be a silver lining of the housing crisis, is more people in houses, community is built in, as a number of people have said tonight. Yeah, that's our story.
I'd like to say that
Hang on, let's see if there's anybody else who hasn't spoken who wants to speak. Okay, hold that thought. And let's let Primrose go for a moment. Of course.
Um, uh, yeah, Andy, what you were talking about like the like trickle down idea of like building like fancy housing in hopes that it like opens up more like normal housing or whatever, it's like seems so obvious to me. Like the market is a really inefficient way to meet the needs, the like basic needs that people have. And it's, yeah, I feel like housing shouldn't be an investment opportunity first and foremost. And so I'm interested in like hearing from people who live in non-market housing, like people who own like housing trust houses, and like what the potential of expanding that might look like. Because in my mind, like a way out of this crisis is pulling more housing out of the market because it's a waste of money. Like most of the money that you spend for rent is just going to your landlord in order for them to make money. Like especially once they've paid their mortgage, you're just paying them money for nothing. Whereas like if we could just pay for the housing directly and not have to add this extra layer that makes it so much more expensive, we could have a lot more housing and then it would not be so restricted. And there is merit to like the market is good at creating excess like to a fault sometimes, as we see in our fucking sorry, our the fact that the planet's falling apart is a result of the market being way too good at creating excess. But there is merit to that, and so there is like it is good to just like build a bunch of housing in order to have excess. And at the same time, that isn't going to like solve the problem because the problem is that housing is a commodity that it's used for people to make profit from, which is backwards when everyone has that as a basic need. So I'd be curious to hear people who live in those kind of housing situations and talk about what expanding what we already have or like creating different structures might look like to reach those ends.
And I have a quick question, if I could, you know, so when you were campaigning, I think you knocked on every door in Ward 5. What did you hear from people? I'm sure housing came up. A little bit.
Almost everyone I talked to about housing said, don't tell, but I think we should build 6-story apartment buildings.
Yeah.
So I am very curious to Prim's point about what options there are for community investment in collectively owned housing and in real estate cooperatives. I grew up in a real estate co-op in New York City. The biggest real estate co-op in the country is in New York City. It's called Co-op City, and it's basically the size of Burlington. It's yeah. Anyway, it's the same population as Chittenden County. And we could be building dense housing that isn't, you know, gonna not pencil out, which is how we lose all of our good housing development, because people could invest in it up front. And we have people who are able to afford a down payment 10 or 15 years ago in Burlington and are not able to afford one now. But it's not that nobody has any money to spend on housing. People want to spend the money that they do have on housing. And if we can create meaningful ways to invest that money in housing solutions that are going to be permanently affordable, we might have another way into that. And I think similarly to what you were saying, Prim, building non-market housing is a way to secure the future of this city in a way that building, you know, affordable housing that's tracked to a certain area median income percentage is not necessarily going to, because as we continue to have wealthier people move to this place that is safe from a lot of climate risks, we're going to see the median income go up, which is just going to continue to leave people behind.
All right, I'm mindful of time. We said we would adjourn at 8, which was 8 minutes ago. So hold on one second. I'm going to adjourn the meeting just in the sense of anyone who needs to go, please feel free to do so. But as always, people who want to keep talking are welcome to stay, and delighted to continue the conversation.
I wanted to. Tiff have anything to say at all up there? She's been up there all day, but.
Tiff, you've been smiling at us this whole time there.
I do think it would be really helpful for us to have somebody from, say, Champlain Housing Trust and, oh, I'm getting an echo here. I'll speak quickly. So I do think that it would be helpful to have some of the developers and some of the affordable housing folks talk about what is actually happening in Burlington. How many units are planned over the next couple of years? There's a lot that there's a lot of housing that is online. There are zoning changes that have been made that will make building housing easier. There will, I too am intrigued by how we can make cooperative housing easier to access and more plentiful in a place like Burlington. So at any rate, I think that housing will continue to be a huge issue for the legislature this year. I don't think that it's I don't think there's a single silver bullet. Unfortunately, I mean, we have underinvested in housing that is affordable for years and years and years and years. And now we're trying to make up for it. And it's going to take a while. I'm heartened by the broad interest, bipartisan interest in funding housing. That's going to be pretty difficult to do this year, given federal cuts. And so, I mean, to fund it at the rate that we have, at the amounts that we have in recent years, but I just enjoyed the conversation and listening to it, and happy to brainstorm who we might invite as guests to talk about it more broadly and to better understand kind of the overall game plan in Burlington.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Nate Lantieri here. I'm a Ward 5 resident. Sorry, I came in so late. I had another meeting that went until 7:45. But I'm here. Glad I was able to get it in and kind of building up what Tiff was saying. So I am a Ward 5 resident, and I also work at Vermont Housing Finance Agency. I'm the research coordinator over there. And yeah, I saw I don't know if it actually came from you, Jason, but it had your name on it, the email saying, hey, we have an NPA on Thursday and there's going to be a discussion about housing. There you go. Yeah. They work. They end up in people's inbox. And yeah, I just wanted to offer the information that I have and what I can kind of bring from my experience working in the state housing landscape over the past few years. So as the conversation continues to unfold, I would be happy to present. My main role is that I run the website that's called housingdata.org. So really kind of trying to collect and quantify the information that is available about the housing conditions in the state. And something that I really like to do with that is to give housing advocates the tools and the information to be empowered to understand how to work within this pretty complex system of housing funding and building affordable housing. What do some of these baseline definitions and things like that mean? So happy to do that in my backyard and help our neighbors. So that's all. Thank you, everybody.
So get down here.
Yeah, I'm a Ward 3 resident, but I just had two quick thoughts. I want to echo
Say your name.
Yeah, I'm Barbara Turnbull.
Our seat.
That's right. I also grew up in a cooperative residential community, which was really wonderful. And I'm very curious for what options exist to help people set up cooperatives with friends or family. I think this is something my friends and I talk about a lot. People can buy a building together from the landlord and turn that into perpetually affordable cooperative housing. Burlington has a couple like co-housing opportunities. And I think I echo what Lena and Prim said about, that should be a focus of investment for the future. And then also I'm concerned about how much of our housing stock in Burlington can be quite substandard in terms of upkeep. When the power imbalance between landlords and renters is such that it is in Burlington, we end up with people not having a lot of choices and just having to take what they can get. So I'm curious what we can do to improve conditions in some of the, really long neglected historic buildings that a lot of us live in.
I can speak to that. Yeah. There has been a lot of effort to do tenant organizing, especially in properties owned by the big landlords in town. But it's basically impossible to encourage tenants to do organizing because we don't have just cause eviction, which has been floundering in the state legislature for a couple of years, even though we passed it in Burlington. So the single greatest benefit to tenants organizing in Burlington would be the passage of and the enactment of just cause eviction, which would then protect people from no cause eviction, which can happen to you if you and your neighbors get together and organize against your landlord. So we have a structural issue preventing that. And I think to your point, there's another policy option that can be really transformative called tenant opportunity to purchase, which I believe has become law in Boston. And it essentially gives tenants the first right of refusal when a landlord chooses to sell a building, which is then a beautiful opportunity for a bunch of people who already are living in the same building to pool their funds and purchase that building and then turn it into permanently affordable housing.
Vermont already has for mobile home parks, there's a right of first refusal for residents of mobile. All right. Oh, sorry. Yes, I was not sure what you're. I just said that what Lena just mentioned is something we already have for residents of mobile home parks, which have right of first refusal when a mobile home park goes on the market. So there's models not only in other states, but also an analogous law already on the books here in Vermont. Milo.
I just want to sneak in two quick things. The Progressive Party, we're working on a housing agenda, and we're going to be out in the streets starting September 27th through October. We're going to be knocking doors specifically to talk to the community about housing. So that would be great to come back and share that. We also, and I'm going to dig up the meeting. We had a presentation which gave us some data that looked at new housing that's been permitted since the update in neighborhood code. So specifically housing that had not been allowed before, but with the updates of neighborhood code was being allowed. And I'll try and dig into those numbers because it would be good to periodically be updated on that in order to see how that's progressing. I think, the big things right now are the expense, the uncertainty with our government, tariffs affecting materials. That's why we're seeing the hotel building open first and not the housing in the pit. It's because you need the hotel to make the quote unquote math work. There's been a lot of changes in what's been happening there. Some of the affordable units got moved to Cambrian Rise in order to kind of finances are going along on that project. So financing is a big part of the conversation. Thank you.
So maybe if I could just have a final thought on this, you can see that this is a topic that affects every single person in the room in a different way, maybe. And the different areas that we talked about tonight may be one of the things, because there's so much to talk about. We probably can't do it in one NPA meeting on a Thursday night. So what maybe us as a steering committee should talk about is tackling each one of these topics or each one of these segments, every month as part of our meeting, and have it be a main theme for the rest of our year, and hopefully come to some things where some projects develop out of it that are more actionable.
Yeah, that's a great thought. And it underscores that this is really just the starting point, and the idea of NPA meeting on housing was really just a way to prompt this conversation, not a fence around some predetermined thing. So, yeah, we will take, everything that people, offered, bring it back, and, see how we can, within our capacity and the connections and time that we have, put together one or a series of NPA meetings that, dig into these topics. Andy?
Just a quick thing. I think that I agree with Kathy that we won't have time in one meeting, but we certainly won't have time if we set it up so that people are talking at us about housing. I think the way you've structured this discussion has been really good, sort of like bringing people into it. And so often we have these sort of topic meetings where people who are supposed to be experts and probably are experts, like people from Champlain Housing Trust, talk at us. And I think we need to limit that. That's all.
What might be an interesting structure in that context is to have one or a series of discussions around, some aspect of the housing issue, have experts come to that meeting as resources, but then have the facilitator call on those experts when the conversation arrives at a point where it's clear that having somebody provide some background, context, numbers, the kind of thing that experts can bring would actually add to the conversation. But as part of a conversation rather than a replacement for it. Okay, let's call it good. We're over time, but that was very much worth it. Thank you all. Really good conversation and really good food for thought for the steering committee.
And good food. Thank you, Bree. Good food
Yes. Good food for stomachs.